Joel Sherman back with three things. I'm spending my first day in Tampa. I just did about 10 days in Port St. Lucie. Why don't we do three things today? Wrapping up some stuff I believe about the Mets after leaving their camp and being with them for a week and a half to open it. You always want to be careful at this time of year. You could be fooled. Guys come in, everyone has great optimism throughout the landscape. Even the teams that are going to lose 90, 100 games right now, things feel great. So you always want to have that grain or three of salt on everything. But I left Met Camp thinking relatively well of them. I came in thinking that they'd be a good team. I certainly left. Why don't we break it down in some phases? Let's start here for three things with number one, their pitching. I can tell you that the two things that stood out the most as far as starting pitching is the Mets are just, as they should be, just wild about Nolan McLean. They're not screaming it from the rooftops because ultimately he's still going to qualify as a rookie this year. And I would think he's going to be one of the favorites to be rookie of the year in the National League. He's leaving in the next few days to join Team USA for the World Baseball Classic, him and Clay Holmes. But the Mets just think he's the real deal in every way, from stuff to the right stuff, to the things he's made of, to his mentality, to how he approaches things. They think they have a top of the rotation guy that the eight start cameo last year where he was really, really good when things were really, really bad for the Mets. Was not some flimsy fly-by-night thing. They think he's the real deal. And the other thing that excites them this spring training is Kodai Senga looking so good so early. Again, grains of salt. Until he was hurt June 12th last year, even though he came in and kind of had a laconic spring training last year. In mid-June, he would have been in the race for Cy Young if it was held then. And then, he takes the high throw from Pete Alonso, hurts his hamstring, and neither him or the Mets are ever the same. They feel great. He's throwing hard, going about things hard. And you know what the difference is here. Obviously, they traded for Freddie Peralta to pitch towards the top of their rotation. But Kodai Senga has had long periods where he has pitched like a top of the rotation starter for the Mets. What if he can do that? And if Nolan McLean could do that? The Mets can have a very, very strong top of the rotation at a time where the Braves have taken a couple of injuries already to their rotation, Schwellenbach and Waldrip. They came in knowing Smith-Schwarber wasn't going to probably pitch this year after Tommy John surgery. There's age on Chris Sale. There's concerns about how much Ronaldo Lopez could give them after a shoulder injury. They have pitching stuff. Zach Wheeler will not begin the season for the Phillies after thoracic outlet syndrome surgery. They think he'll be back right away, but that's a question. Ranger Suarez isn't there anymore, who was a very, very good starting pitcher. Aaron Nola had a bad year last year. Will he bounce back in his mid-30s? And who's Andrew Painter? The Mets might have, among the contenders, the best rotation, especially if the two things they believe early in this camp about Senga and McLean play out. As far as the lineup and the offense, the Mets feel like they have a very, very, and they should, have a very, very strong top four in the lineup. Lindor when he gets healthy after his hamate bone surgery, Soto, Bichette, and Polanco should give them a strong four. And they know there's a lot of floor-to-ceiling stuff the rest of the way in the lineup. And right now they feel good about all of it. I think if the season started today, we haven't even played a spring game, Carson Bench would end up being the right fielder. Obviously a lot of variables there. I wrote about Luis Robert Jr., the center fielder. They're slow playing him. I talked to his manager from 2023, Pedro Grafal, and Charlie Montoyo, who was the bench coach that year. That was the year he finished 12th for the AL MVP. They thought that health, which he hasn't had the last 2 years, and being surrounded by better lineup guys with the Mets, he was the man in Chicago. And I think ultimately the weight might have been too much for him. You might notice some people have left the White Sox in recent years. The Yanks built somewhat of a bullpen out of it. Guys like Ian Hamilton and Jake Cousins and especially Tim Hill all played better for the Yankees than for the White Sox, much better. Gavin Sheets did in San Diego last year, became a good hitter, and Andrew Vaughn became a really good hitter in with the Brewers in a way he never had with the White Sox. So maybe getting out at age 28 is the right time. They spoke glowingly about the guy. Francisco Alvarez is obviously a variable guy if he could stay healthy or not. But the one name I wanted to highlight with the lineups, because he's a little bit kind of fallen under the radar, I think, is Mark Vientos. The Mets have not given up on Mark Vientos. They think the 27 homer impact guy from a couple of years ago is still there, and that there's at bats at DH and first base. Maybe he'll throw in a third base every once in a while. I wouldn't expect it that much. But they still think that Vientos is a top flight hitter. And think about how that changes the lineup if suddenly he's the 27 homer guy again and maybe hitting fifth behind Polanco. And then, you push down Robert a little more. You push down Alvarez a little more. You push down Benj a little more into the lineup. It's a chance for a long lineup. And I do think Vientos is a swing guy if he could recapture 2024 when he broke out and was so good. The last of three things, let's talk about the defense, because it is going to be a change, especially Polanco has never played, Jorge Polanco's never played first base for a full inning in the major leagues before. Bo Bichette has not played third base for an inning in his life. And I know that the Mets' theory is they're going to be better at those positions than they were last year. They really thought we're not very high on Alonso at first base, like either with their eyes or their metrics, and they thought it would get worse. I think they think Polanco will be able to handle it. I know he'll put in the work. I could see him already doing it. Bichette at third. I think this is going to be a little rougher than the Mets are anticipating. The same with moving Brett Beatty to new positions, though he handled second base okay last year. He's going to take on some right field and perhaps some first base. For a team that did talk a lot about run prevention, David Stearns going into the offseason, I think that, these are going to be works in progress. Do I think that these players could get to major league average? Probably. But Polanco has had some lower body injuries along the way here. He went for surgery, repaired it before last season, and had a really good year and stayed mainly healthy last year. But it's a new position. I do think first base is more important and harder than it's made out. We'll see how he handles that. I watched a lot of Bichette over the last 2 or 3 days on the field. He is not a natural-looking third baseman. Then again, he's done it for about 3 or 4 days in camp and maybe a few weeks before that. And so he has time over the next 6 weeks to adjust and grow more comfortable and look like a third baseman. But as I left Met camp, I did feel better about the rotation. I felt better about the potential length of the lineup. My question mark is about the defense, though I think they'll be better up the middle with Robert and Simeon in center at second. I do wonder about those infield corners, and I do wonder about Beatty's adaptability. But that's some of my early thoughts from Met camp.